Hello, virtual reality practitioners. I'm Jeremy Sarchet with WorldViz, and I'd like to share a little bit about a virtual reality project I'm working on. This virtual reality project consists of avatars, specifically improving our techniques for bringing avatars to life. So if you don't know about WorldViz, we're a company who provides virtual reality tools for professional applications. And I'm here this week on business. I'm visiting a client site. And this client, I should say, has a state-of-the-art, world-class virtual reality laboratory. And this virtual reality laboratory has a world-class motion tracking system, where motion tracking is basically the starting point for virtual reality. As you may know, as I hope you know, virtual reality requires motion tracking as the basis for controlling what happens in virtual reality. So just like in a video game you have a joystick, well, in virtual reality you're actually moving your body, and you want virtual reality to respond in a natural way. So the motion tracking is necessary to say, where am I as a user in virtual reality, and where am I looking? And this is achieved in this laboratory with a collection of cameras and markers, where each marker is like a shiny little ball of light. And the cameras are sensitive to the shiny little ball of light. They pick up on it, and together the whole collection of cameras all around you in the room works together to triangulate on the shiny ball and says, okay, the shiny ball is now here at this location with these coordinates in the room. So this is state of the art for commercial motion tracking, and it can be referred to as marker-based motion tracking. So the virtual reality laboratory has a lovely marker-based motion tracking system. Specifically, it's of the company Motion Analysis. It's one of their Cortex systems, for those of you who are familiar with such systems, one of the systems that our VR engine Vizard supports. And okay, so I'm going to assume that we're already comfortable with the idea of creating a viewpoint for the user, where the user moves around, and the viewpoint is necessarily constructed based on the tracking data of where the user is and where the user is looking, drawn as an image to the display, which is strapped to the user's head. So we're going to assume that we got that taken care of. And why I'm here this week, what we're working on now, is taking it up to the next level. Not only drawing the world as it should be seen from your viewpoint, but also drawing your avatar. And just like your control for moving through the world is the motion tracking system, your control for the avatar is the motion tracking system as well. So I'll step back for a moment and ask, what is an avatar? Well, an avatar is a virtual representation of oneself. Now, the classic ideal avatar, if I have my own avatar, is going to look just like me, and it's going to move around just like me. So if I'm in virtual reality, it's going to move in the same way, and it's going to look just like me. It's going to be an exact doppelganger. That we could say is the classic goal. I mean, there's other goals you could have. You could say maybe you want to enhance your avatar, or make it look different in some way, or maybe you want a different species altogether. There's the classic example of what would it be like if I was in virtual reality and I had the body of a lobster. This fascinating area of research and investigation and experimentation, but for the purposes of this talk, we're going to assume, okay, the goal is to have me, a close, high fidelity, a truthful representation of me in virtual reality. And so at a typical commercial VR lab, what do we got to work with? Well, we got the marker-based motion tracking. And, well, we need to use that somehow to control our avatar, to bring it to life. So I just so happen to have an avatar here on my system. I'd be happy to show you. Let me tab over to it. So we'll open up our avatar, and we created this avatar special for this job this week. As you can see, it's highly fashionable. It's in a nice uniform, which is typical of a manufacturing job, a nice clean suit. So this avatar is what we're working with. We're going to want this to be our body. And as I said before, the motion tracking is controlling the avatar. But what we really want is for the control to be so good that you stop having the sense that you're actually controlling the avatar, and it gets to a point where you feel like you're actually being the avatar. That is to say, it's you, it's your body, it's your being in virtual reality. So let's take a look at just what makes up this avatar. We can see his clothes, we can see a little bit of skin showing through the opening on his face mask, and we can go in and look at the components here, and we see, oh my goodness, these are the pieces of the skeleton. There are a lot of pieces in this skeleton. We can go through and let's take a peek at just a few of these things. So this skeleton, let's see, we have the upper arm, and then the forearm, and the hand, and so on. And we can go through and look at all these coordinates and the offsets and the hierarchical relationship. I mean, okay, it's just like the basic song, which is the head bone connected to the shoulder bone connected to the, the head is connected to the neck bone connected to the shoulder bone connected to the backbone, and so on and so forth. So that's the avatar, and you can stop back, and the question is, how on earth are we going to control such complexity in our avatar if all we got to work with is marker-based motion tracking? Well, as you may know from watching a behind-the-scenes special of a film, the way that Hollywood does it with marker-based motion tracking is they take painstaking effort to have a lot of these shiny balls of light, and you suit up on these shiny balls of light, and there's maybe 30 or 40 of them, and it is a lot of effort, but they achieve a pretty dang impressive result of controlling a digital human thanks to an actor, or we could say a user's motion. But for virtual reality, dang, we don't want to take so much effort just to go into virtual reality. We don't want to have to go through a half hour of suiting up and making sure everything's all just right on your body just to go into virtual reality. We want to be able to go into virtual reality just as easily as we can put on shoes, gloves, and a hat. So the analog there is that with our marker-based motion tracking system, we're not going to use 30 or 40 markers in a gigantic arrangement in a suit. We're just going to say, keep it simple. Let's stick with 5, for example. 1 head, 2 hands, and 2 feet. So if we have just 5 markers, then, man, there's a whole lot of other bones and joints in the skeleton that are not really going to be accounted for. So how do we fill that in? What do we do with all that other stuff? Well, with the marker-based motion tracking, the state-of-the-art technique for bringing for bringing an avatar to life is using inverse kinematics. So inverse kinematics is the mathematical process of figuring out how to move an appendage to achieve a desired result. So inverse refers to the fact that it's a backwards thing. The forward kinematics, normal kinematics, would be how it works in reality. So let's say, for example, the goal is for me to move my hand in such a way that I touch my finger to my nose. So I'm pretty good at that, I should say. And you might be surprised to hear that that's not achieved by some supernatural psychological force field that grabs a hold of my finger and pulls it towards my nose. No. In reality, it's even more magical than that. In reality, what's happening is my brain is sending a electrical signal to my muscles, say the muscles in my shoulder, to move my upper arm by way of pulling on the bone. And the bone, of course, rotates in the shoulder joint, and I have muscles in my upper arm which pull on my forearm bone, and my elbow rotates, and so on. And all of these perform their pulls, their contractions, in just the right amount to articulate an angular deflection in the joints, just the right amount, so that the end result, aha, I touch my finger to my nose. So it's a marvelous, magical feat how this occurs in reality. But in virtual reality, right, you don't have the ability to control the thing with your brain. Well, not yet anyways, at least in the current state of the technology. Nor do you have the ability to control your avatar with your muscles. At least not directly. Ultimately, the thing that's controlling the avatar is just these shiny balls, these markers. So when we're controlling our avatar with the shiny balls, it's the inverse kinematics, which fills in all the rest, which says, okay, if I know that my finger is touching my nose, but I don't know anything else, I need to somehow take a good guess, a smart guess. Maybe I use mathematics and say the joints can only move in certain dimensions, or I have certain freedom to rotate. My elbow is a hinge, for example. My shoulder is a ball joint. My wrist is pretty much like a ball joint, somewhat like a hinge. So the mathematics say, if this is touching this, then fill in the blank. And we're going to do the inverse process, which is we're going to reconstruct that whole complex sequence of joint articulations that's required to get my finger to touch my nose. And if we really wanted to be strict about it, we would say that, well, how does my shoulder get to be where it is? My shoulder is attached to my spine. by some who knows what kind of joint. And my spine is attached to my pelvis, and well, my pelvis is supported, right now I'm sitting on a chair, so it's supported by my rear end. So really, you'd have to reconstruct, I mean, we're reconstructing more than just my arm, we're reconstructing my whole body. So that, maybe I had my feet tracked also, so I would need to reconstruct how my legs are. If I know that there's a chair in the world, maybe my inverse kinematics is so smart that it can draw the unknown parts of my body, unknown to the motion tracking system, in such a way that makes it look believable that my avatar is sitting in a chair. Wouldn't that be great? So, if you're interested, I have prepared with me some demonstrations of our inverse kinematics in action. So, we include these inverse kinematics with Vizard, our VR engine, and I have a lovely little program to show them off here. So, we'll start off with that. We'll go over to Vizard, our VR engine. We'll open up the editor, and what we have here is a script that I'll run for you, which is a clever way to show off inverse kinematics. What's happening is that we have two avatars in this script. The avatar on the left, we're going to see go through some stock animations that an accomplished artist or an animator worked hard to produce, treating this avatar on the left as if it was some sort of a doll, and grabbing each joint and moving it manually and reviewing and saving, and in such process animating this digital character in just the same way that a computer-generated film might do it, without the motion tracking. So this is kind of like our proxy for tracking data. So it's nice. It's a nice stock animation, right? They're walking pretty good. And we're going to say, okay, on the left, here where my mouse is the stock animation, and the avatar on the right is actually not duplicating what the avatar on the left is doing. It's actually being powered by these inverse kinematics. So I can pull up the visualization of the trackers, which are not actually trackers, okay, they're just the sampled or the measured locations of the head, the hands, and the feet of the female avatar on the left. And they're powering the clean suit avatar on the right. And we see, wow, the inverse kinematics are pretty good here. Let's reposition ourselves so we can take a close look. Lovely. And we go through, we have a whole collection of stock animations. This one's nice. So we got some dancing. And I should say, these particular stock animations are nice and flattering to our inverse kinematics engine. But I'm sorry to say that if we go into the real world, if we say, okay, stock animations are nice, but okay, our real goal here is to have real people, real humans, doing real things in virtual reality, then I'm sorry to say what can happen is that these users can do unexpected things, or they can get into weird positions that, I have to admit, cause the inverse kinematics engine to perform in a way that's less than desirable, to fall short sometimes. So we see the stock animations. We like those. Those are nice. But why I'm here this week, why we're working here, is to measure and improve our inverse kinematics with actual users. So we've come here, and my colleague Chris Coffin, who is a wonderful programmer, in fact, Chris he's the programmer behind our current inverse kinematics library, so that's quite an accomplishment. He also programmed this lovely utility for recording real motion tracking data. And we can make these recordings, and then we can say, okay, we got these. We're going to use these as a standard reference, a standard benchmark, or a tool from which we can benchmark how our inverse kinematics performs. So we got recordings of trackers, and we can play back those recordings while running our inverse kinematics. So I'll be happy to show you those right now as well. Let me tab back over, and we'll run this recorder playback program. And what I have here to show you first is a recording where we were just taking recordings of the head and the two hands. So we see here, okay, by default, we don't have any recording loaded. And the avatar here, which is powered by trackers on only the hands and the head, it's all located at the origin. So we can see here, we can zoom in. Everything's at 0, 0, 0 at the origin. So you have avatars like this. That's in the absence of anything happening with the tracker data. But as soon as we play back the recording, it comes to life. So we see here we have a nice recording. One of the steps we need to perform is a little calibration, so we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, and now we can play the lovely recording. So we recorded this earlier today in the motion tracking studio, and we see here the result. This is not a recording of the actual avatar as it was happening today. This is just a recording of the tracking data, and we're playing it back with the inverse kinematics animating the avatar here as if it was happening live. So this is a powerful tool that allows us, now we can go and we can tweak, and we can say, okay, the inverse kinematics is not quite giving a good guess in this current situation. How can we improve it? So this is going to be our work moving forward. So, as I mentioned, sometimes the user can do unexpected things and do things which kind of defeat the inverse kinematics, at least in its present state, right, until we make it better. So I can show you one such recording. We will load it up here. And this recording we call Twisted Reach. Okay, so we'll load up the Twisted Reach recording, and we'll play that back. And here I am giving you a true-to-life look at the limitations of the inverse kinematics. So it's a tough thing to do, and we're working hard to make it better. But I'll give you an honest look as to some of the limitations here. So let's see. We'll play this Twisted Reach animation, and we'll see just what happens. I'm sorry, it's not an animation. We'll play the Twisted Reach tracker recorder, and we'll see the inverse kinematics in action. There it is. And we can go up and we can say, okay, let's pause this. And we turn around and we see, aha, looks like it's breaking the realism a little bit. We're in like bullet time right now, so we pause everything and we take a close-up look and we see, okay, I think this shoulder is a little out of whack. Maybe it's the inverse kinematics, but looking at it, it also could just be the skin or the clothes of the avatar doing this funkiness. So we have now some hard, provable evidence, and we can use this to test our improvements. So that's an exciting thing, and that's what I'm here to work on this week. And, well, I can show you another pre-recorded animation. And in this other one, we have a configuration with the head, both hands, and both feet. So we'll run that here. And now we're getting even more complicated, right? Not only are we doing 3 things, but we have the 2 feet also. So we'll load this up. We'll press play. Okay. We'll have a look here. There's the starting position. This is just a little throwaway test recording that we did, but we'll play through it. Okay, it's pretty mellow. Nothing really out of the ordinary. We see the 5 trackers there. We can, go around and inspect and explore it. Well, we'll stop this one for now. Oh, there's the avatar back in the ground. And we will go and we'll load a different one. This one we call One Knee Reach Forward. We'll load this one up. And we'll play this one. And let's have a look. So the user here was going to take a knee, was going to get down on one knee and try to reach forward. So he's playing pretend, he's in virtual reality. He says, I want to see what it would be like if I was on my knees and reaching forward. How would the avatar look? And so here we are. We pause the playback of the recorded trackers. And we pause the inverse kinematics. And we see, okay, this pose, that looks all right. It's not maybe the best pose. It has a few flaws, but it looks plausible. So we can accept that. But if you actually saw what the user was doing in real life, you would say, oh, that's pretty off. The user in real life is only resting on one knee, whereas here in virtual reality, both knees are down. So that's kind of funky. In real life, the left foot here, I'll mouse over it, is planted on the ground, and the shin goes straight up. And it's actually that the pelvis or the waist of this human in real life is farther backwards, and the back is actually slouched. Right? If you think about the center of gravity of an avatar, the back and the hips should be farther back in this situation. At least, okay, this is an uncomfortable pose to be in, you might imagine, just trying to duplicate this. So what do we conclude? Well, let's look at it some more. Let's look at it carefully. And we see, well, we'll go through the playback here. And we start out, he's standing up, and he kind of moves, and now he's starting to crouch down, and we can see, aha, one thing we notice, I'll pause it, his torso remains always upright. We don't have any tracking information on his hips, so we just have to take a best guess as to what the torso is doing. And as we can see here, clearly, the only thing that it's doing, and as far as guessing what the torso is doing, is, let's just assume the torso is straight up and down. And for many purposes, that's just fine. But as we're here and we're trying to benchmark and refine, I think this is one thing that sticks out in my mind that I'd like to adventure in programming to refine the behavior of the inverse kinematics. So there's a little peek at our inverse kinematics run with live motion tracking data. And we can see just how it accomplishes the complex task of bringing an avatar to life. So we'll close this out, and that is pretty much everything that I wanted to share with you today. So let's go. In conclusion, 3 things. In conclusion, 1, if you are in virtual reality powered by marker-based motion tracking and you do not want to be invisible, then you need an avatar. You need a body. If you have an avatar and you have a body, then our goal is going to be to bring that avatar to life, to make it behave in a convincing and realistic and natural way that's so good that it makes you feel like you're being the avatar. And the 3rd point in conclusion is that marker-based motion tracking is not the only way to achieve virtual reality or to achieve avatar control or avatar being. There are other technologies that exist now that are only going to keep getting better, and in my opinion, are sooner or later going to replace marker-based motion tracking and inverse kinematics and make them both obsolete. I'm talking about 2 things. I'm talking about 3D cameras, which are cameras that can see 3D, and not because there's 2 of them side by side, which is how our own eyeballs work, but they can see 3D in a strictly true sense, which is that for every pixel on the camera, it knows how far away the pixel is from that camera. So you can imagine, wow, if a camera is capable of seeing the depth of everything in its view, that is to say, it's doing much more than just trying to find a shiny ball of light. If it can do that, that's quite an accomplishment. And these things are getting better as the hardware, computer hardware improves. The other important ingredient, essential ingredient, is the image processing. This is in the field of computer vision, which is to say that we have the depth camera, or multiple depth cameras. Now, how can we construct a world which has the 3D geometry of everything that the depth camera is seeing? And this is a magical thing, because in the real world, what we're seeing are just the skins of things. We're not seeing shiny balls of light. What we see when we look at ourselves is our skin. That's what we see when we look at others. And when we look at an object, what we see is the skin of the object. That's what these cameras are seeing. And the ability of this scene reconstruction based on generating the skins of things in virtual reality is, in my opinion, it's the ultimate solution to the tracking problem and the avatar problem. So it's coming, and these 2 technologies that we're working on this week, that my colleagues are working carefully and thoughtfully on, they do have an expiration date. But for now, they're the state-of-the-art, they're useful. Virtual reality labs, world-class research is done with these 2 technologies, and there's still plenty of room for wonderful programming and improvement and development efforts, and I look forward to continuing work here. So there's the conclusion, and I would like to take us out by returning back to the stock animations program. So let's go over there. And we'll run the stock animations program. Let that load up here. And we will go towards, we'll navigate over, and we'll play my favorite of all these animations. There we are, the applause. So let's applaud with the avatars. Let's say, bravo, virtual reality. Bravo, inverse kinematics. Bravo. Thanks for watching.